Welcome to another episode of Friends in Wonder, where each week we explore topics we believe are relevant in today's culture. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. I'm Joe Luther.
And I'm Vince Kern. Now let's explore and wonder together. Well, it's the end of the year at Friends in Wonder, and we are going to continue wondering right until the end of it. And we've got an episode today that is going to talk a little bit about our experiences over the year. And also, for me, this has been a time where I really take a break from the news cycle and sit back and observe things. But I also try to find things that are a little more fun and interesting. And I think you're kind of doing the same, huh, Joe?
Well, yeah, we thought that we certainly had the opportunity to take this week off because from what our research has shown is that most podcasters take the week off in between Christmas and New Year's. But we thought, wouldn't it be fun to maybe do a year in review with some interesting news stories from 2022 from around the world, and maybe also a couple quick reflections about our own personal year of 2022.
Yeah, because even though we had the opportunity, we're not most podcasters, are we?
Well,
we're always wondering, and we can't stop wondering. So we thought we would give you one more episode this year, and we hope you enjoy some of our look back on our personal things. It's been a pretty significant year for you, Joe. You had a major event in your life.
Yeah, I guess it would be an understatement to say that the big thing in my year was the heart surgery. And of course, we ended up covering that in a kind of a time capsule recording, which turned into an episode really of my thoughts leading up to heart surgery. And then we did a secondary episode after that.
Yeah, we had to tell everybody how it went and how you were doing.
Right, because we didn't want to leave people hanging. But yeah, look, that was a big part of my year because there were months leading up to it and months after it that, I was totally focused on that. And, gratefully, you and I had started the podcast project, prior to really me even knowing that I was going to get surgery. So there was that. And I got to tell you, Vince, it was very good to have that going on in my life while I was dealing with this, because I think we all need something to kind of nudge us forward. And knowing that we had more podcast episodes to get out made me, very excited to get on with my recovery. So yeah, that was a big part for me. What would you say the big part of your 2022 was?
Well, I gotta step back a little bit and give you credit, give you kudos for how you went through your experience there, and I think the podcasts really reflect that those two that we didn't really, like you said, didn't intend to be podcasts, but they're actually getting pretty good play, and that was a pretty significant part of my year as well, dealing with the emotion of a friend that you've known for close to 60 years. You've been through everything together, and then this very harsh reality that that smacks you in the face, and I'm smacked you in the face probably in a very different way than it smacked those who love you in the face. But I got to give you kudos for the way you went through it, and only missing a couple of weeks in the studio. You were like right back in there. So yeah, that was a pretty significant part of our Friends in Wonder experience. And other than that, I had a little bit of good travel this year. Went to Sanibel Island with my lovely wife in April, and we had some good friends from Traverse City, which is up at the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. It gets pretty harsh winters up there, so they were down there for a month, and I got to tell you, Sanibel Island is just a beautiful place. I'm so glad we got to experience it. Unfortunately, Hurricane Ian in September did a pretty good job of running right through the middle of that island.
Yeah, that was the epicenter, sadly.
Yeah, very, very sad about that. I had, some good time in Minnesota, which is a beautiful state when you get to some of the northern and western parts, and lots of good time up at our family place up north, which you know well about because you and our great friend Paul and I sort of do an annual trek up there. For I get to open up the cottage and we get to do a lot of hiking and we get to sit on the shores of Lake Superior, which is where that place is at. And it's one of the most beautiful places that I think either one of us have ever been.
Well, yeah, there is nothing like the tranquil yet powerful energy that you get from the big lake they call Gitchagumi. But you had a really interesting trip up to the UP one time this summer. That was in May, wasn't it?
That was the first trip. Yeah, I went up on a Friday, and you guys were coming up on a Monday, and I went up because we had some
Oh,
roofers
right. Yeah, that was
coming to
that
put a
trip.
roof on it, and quite a synchronistic series of events led me to be in basically a tornado went right by my car, and it started out with a flat tire, which was an unusual experience because Spirit had been telling me that the journey itself was going to be an adventure. And when you get that message, my brain went to thoughts of all beautiful birch trees and spring and all of the beautiful things that nature has to offer us. And then
Elk running in fields, all that kind of good stuff.
yeah, not a flat tire in the middle of nowhere on I-75 where you're literally 20 miles away from a city. But a state trooper came along and helped me out. And I recall my last words to him. And I'm going to tell a story because I'm going to try and connect a few of these really crazy dots that, Spirit puts you in places and then teaches you things and then takes you out of danger. And I really believe that's what happened here. But the last thing I said to this state trooper was, well, I'm sure you've had an interesting day. And I hope that he had been involved in a crash where a lady was drunk at noon and crashed into a tree, and he was telling me about it. I said, well, I hope that's the craziest thing you have to endure. And lo and behold, a few hours later, the tornado struck the city of Gaylord. Now, there aren't a lot of tornadoes in northern Michigan, I got to tell you, and there are no sirens because it costs too much money for the number of tornadoes that they have. But in any event, I drove on and went to Gaylord because that was the nearest place to get my tire fixed. And they said, well, it's Friday and we're very busy, but we'll take your tire and it'll be a couple hours. Well, a couple hours turned into 2 or 3 hours. And so I basically spent my afternoon sort of looking at the weather, and there was a storm front blowing through. And lo and behold, make this long story short, I was literally the last car out of Bell Tire before a few minutes before the tornado struck. Now, they didn't have sirens, but they did have those phone warnings. And most of the people up there just ignored them because they just don't get tornadoes. And so I left. It was pouring rain. It was nuts. And I was sitting at a light. My car began to shake violently. I looked over to the left, and there was the Wizard of Oz tornado with walls literally flying around the outside and debris everywhere.
Any women riding bikes in that funnel?
I didn't see anybody riding bike, and I didn't see Toto.
I'm sure,
but I got to tell you,
mine was concerned about other things.
Well, it's interesting what your mind goes. You kind of go into another universe, literally. My first thought was, oh, I got to take some pictures of this. And
being the journalist, you had to take pictures.
Yeah, and I rolled down my window, and I thought, no, this is stupid because things are going to be bouncing off my car. And it wasn't that bad. And I mean, as far as things bouncing off my car, but it did shake violently. And I looked over, and the tornado passed probably 1,000 feet to my left. Now, this tornado, 2 people were killed and a bunch injured. It had a 17-mile path. It wound up being a
17-mile path. So that means it touched down and spun like a funnel for 17 miles, creating whatever devastation it does. Can't imagine. Yeah.
And I got to see it, hear it, feel it, and escape it. And
well, what I remember most about that story, after seeing you that weekend, is that all the series of events that led up to you being in that spot at that time. And maybe it sounds cliche because it always takes a series of events for us to be in any position that we're at. But there were so many strange, unusual, like you said, the flat tire and a couple other oddball things that happened that made you be in that spot at that time. And I think you were you were having some, an interesting time processing why that learning experience was put in front of you, and it was quite a quite an eye-opening experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in your body, spirit, and mind when you observe something like that, and just thank God for the first responders and people who handle that stuff. I think I had maybe a little bit of survivor's guilt for a little while, and process that, and then it's funny. You said we were talking earlier. You said that you think back about your heart surgery. It's like feels way in the past, and you don't even think about it sometimes. I don't think about this much, but when it does come up, it definitely is pretty significant.
Yeah, and both those kind of near life altering, life ending experiences cause you to be more grateful for what you have. And we did an episode also on gratitude, and I would say that 2022 is a year of gratitude for me. But there's also some interesting stories that happened in the world, Vince. Why don't we go through some of the stories?
Let's have some fun, Joe. I think some of this is pretty fun. Yeah. And, I've got a couple of things here. I'll start off, and then maybe you can share what you found in your meanderings and wonderings. I know you like to travel a little bit, and sometimes you and your lovely wife, Sonia, hit the road in your car and travel to warmer climates in the winter. I know you're going somewhere in January, but I think you might also be planning a little trip later on. So I thought it would be good because, I'm always looking out for you, my friend. You kind of got to be careful out there when you're in other states because things are a little different. And so I thought what I'd do is find some laws that I can prep you with if you go on your road trip and just sort of help you, be aware of some of these things.
Wait, since this is stories about 2022, you're saying these are laws that are currently on the books in 2022?
Yeah,
I should be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. You know me. I like to jump the outline. I thought this was pretty significant though. So, and others people need to know about these too, because, our listeners are all over the country. So if you're going, all right. So if you're going to Utah, Joe, which probably isn't a warm climate, but
we are.
Okay.
We plan to anyhow.
Well, there you go. So just know that it is illegal not to drink milk in Utah. All right.
Wait, now, what?
Yep, that's now. Wait,
it's illegal not to drink milk.
That's what it says. And first of all, let me say that I'm not making this stuff up. This is from a law, some trial lawyers' website. It's Freewald Law. They're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They have a staff of 6 attorneys and 6 support staff. So these are legitimate laws that they are saying are still on the books. Now, I don't think they would promote these if they weren't legitimate attorneys. So,
well, if you found it on the internet, Vince, I got
it. That's right. That's all you need to know. It's true. So I know you've been to Alaska before. I don't know if you plan to go back, but if you do, just know that it is considered an offense to push a live moose out of a moving airplane. You can't do that. That's on the books. That's a law.
There's a law that did not need to be written, but apparently they thought it did.
Well, that's the other thing. You're an attorney, so I'm very interested to hear your legal opinion on some of these, if you are so inclined. Sticking with animals, if you go to South Dakota, which here is a beautiful place, it's one state I don't think I've been to. No horses neither. You can't go to the Fountain Inn with horses unless they're wearing pants. I know where the Fountain Inn is, but if you go there,
it sounds like a very prudish area.
Now, if you go to North Dakota, and I've been in North Dakota, it's illegal to lie down and fall asleep with your shoes on. I'm wondering, Joe, what would an attorney think of that? Why would might that be the case?
My brain is trying to process what they would be thinking of. It's illegal to take a nap outside with your shoes on?
It's illegal to lie down and fall asleep, I suppose, anywhere with your shoes on. So I wonder if, hotel monitors are the law.
I don't know what to do with it, but I do think the world needs more bare feet in it. So I guess I can go along with that. Maybe not up in North Dakota, though.
Well, this is one I find hard to believe that they haven't amended, because in Texas, it's illegal to take more than 3 sips of beer at a time while standing. in
Oh,
Texas.
so they want you sitting down while you're drinking?
I guess. I don't know.
Or maybe if you're standing up drinking beer, you're more likely to get in a fight. Like I just don't understand.
Texas, baby. Now, some of these laws that you find that are still on the books are church related. So if you go to Nebraska, Joe, and you go to church, which probably are two unlikely things right there in the near future, but you never know. If you find yourself in Nebraska, and if you happen to have a child with you and it burps, you can be arrested. The parent can be arrested.
Burping children in church. We don't tolerate that in Nebraska.
Nope. Mm-mm. Nope.
Well, I guess I can see the wisdom in that too.
You know what you can't do in a church in Alabama?
Drink milk.
No, I don't know about that, but it is illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church.
Well, somebody must have violated that rule a couple of
They
times.
take their serious. Yes, the religion is very serious down there in Alabama. And mustaches are apparently they were the source of a lot of criminal activity back in the day because in Iowa, they're illegal if the bearer has a tendency to habitually kiss other humans. I guess it's okay to have a tendency to kiss like dogs or horses wearing pants or other things. But if you have a tendency to habitually kiss humans in Iowa, don't wear a mustache.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is some interesting laws on the books in 2022.
I got to tell you my favorite one before we ramble on to other things. My favorite one of all time is that, and I don't know if I ever would be at a funeral in Massachusetts, but or you, but if you ever go to a funeral in Massachusetts while you're on your winter road trip, you cannot eat more than 3 sandwiches at a wake.
That's really a law. Come on. I'm going to have to look up this website, Vince. I think somebody was just goading you into quoting them on a podcast, and this is going to blow up in your face.
Do you think I'm on some mushrooms possibly to believe in that crap? All right, let me go to an actual news.
Psychotropics.
Yeah, speaking of psychotropics. Here's my favorite news story of 2022. I'm back in the theme now. My favorite news story of 2022 comes from the Detroit News, my former employer, written by a woman at the Washington Post, allegedly a purveyor of all the. No, they're not all the news that's fit to print. They're democracy dies in darkness. But
oh my!
But yeah, well, that's their theme. So here's the headline. Please
wait a minute. Let's back up. What is their theme? Democracy dies in darkness.
I believe so. That's WAPO's. Yeah.
Oh, and what they're saying is if we don't have the light of truth out there, democracy dies.
Right.
And that's why I can go along with that. It's just a very dark way of saying it, I guess.
Well, exactly. And that's what makes this article so credible and important in today's world. So, because, psychotropics are big. Ayahuasca is becoming a really, what do I want to say, popular experience for people.
Very new agey. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So along those lines, apparently some people, the headline is here. Please stop licking psychedelic toads, the National Park Service warns. They are warning. They sent out a warning in November to visitors to refrain from licking the large Sonoran desert toad as they try to reach a state of hallucinogenic enlightenment from the potent toxic that the animals naturally secrete. So these toads, also known as Colorado River toads, have prominent parotoid glands that secrete a potent toxin. As we may say with most things, whether it's a human being, slug, unfamiliar mushroom, or a large toad with glowing eyes in the dead of night, please refrain from licking.
Wow. Now, so people are going out into the national parks with a specific purpose of finding toads to lick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very interesting. That's 2022.
One way of getting your buzz on, like I told you before, when we were 17, if you'd have told me that you could get pot delivered to your house, I would say, how far have we come? But
In some
But
states like Michigan, you can.
yeah, but I don't know that I'd ever want to pick up a toad and lick it. Okay, I
Don't
got
knock
one
it.
more.
Don't knock it till you try it, Vince.
Right, don't judge. Sorry, didn't mean to judge those of you who have been out licking toads. Please contact us at talk@friendsandwonder.com and tell us about your experience.
Well, seriously though, I mean, I think microdosing and didn't at least one state has made mushrooms legal, and
Probably
I know,
Colorado. I
yeah,
think they make
Colorado
everything pretty
or
much legal out
Oregon.
there.
Yeah. But anyhow, I mean, certainly there's a push towards all of this enlightenment via chemicals. So, uh,
Yeah. All right. So here's one that's a little bit lighter for you, and this will be the
yeah,
last one
please.
I will imbue you with. Uh, so you know me as a journalist, I always listen to Police Scanner, and I still do because I like to know what's going on around me, and it's often interesting their job. You learn a lot about what they deal with, but here's a story from London, from Soho. Apparently, there was an art gallery there, and this woman had went. One of the what do you call the people in art galleries that procures
Curator.
curator? The curator, and her name is Hannah, and Hannah was working in the gallery, and she had just locked up and gone upstairs to make a cup of tea. She came down to find the door off its hinges and two confused police officers. So it turns out that London Metropolitan Police were responding to a call about a person in distress at the gallery on the 25th of November. So this happened pretty recently. Officers forced entry to the address where they uncovered that the person was in fact a mannequin.
Well, it must have been a very realistic mannequin.
Yeah. In fact, it was. The work was commissioned by a guy named Steve Lazarades, Banksy's former
Easy for
agent.
you to say.
Yeah, there you go. Banksy's former agent, though. So it was a lifeless woman that they had been trying to save. Let's see. She was slumped over, unconscious, over a table with her head in a bowl of soup. And they couldn't see her face. So apparently somebody passing by thought that this person was in distress and called the police.
Well, it's good to know there's people out there looking out for those inside of stores or art galleries that could be in distress.
Nosiness equals safety sometimes, doesn't it? Apparently, this isn't the first time it happened. In October, paramedics were called to assist the woman as well. So there you have it. There's some of my wonderings for the year.
Well, Vince, that was very enlightening and very much a snapshot into the way your brain thinks. When we talked about grabbing some stories from 2022, that's what you came up with. Well,
that's where I went.
Here's a window into my brain, I guess. The first thing that I noticed that I thought was interesting and maybe isn't so funny, but is worthy of wonder, that is that in 2022, rather, Merriam-Webster's word of the year is gaslighting.
Apparently there's a lot of that going on.
Word of the year is gaslighting. And I don't know. It took me, it's interesting because I think over the last couple of years, it's been used a lot more and more. And I had to try to understand what it even means. Apparently it goes back to some play in 1938 that was then adapted into multiple movies and has to do with a husband who was trying to make his wife believe that she was insane by dimming the lights gas lights in the house. And anytime that she thought that they were dim, he's like, no, they're as bright as always. And I guess gaslighting is the big word of 2022. And rather than go into all the reasons why, I just think that's a really interesting state of affairs. That's my wonderment is why gaslighting. And gaslighting is defined among other things in Merriam-Webster's book of definitions as the act or practice of grossly misleading someone, especially for one's own advantage. And anyhow,
it's a statement on where our culture is today, isn't it?
That's the word of the year, and do with that as you please. Here's another interesting story.
I think I know what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, just duly noted, I guess.
Duly noted.
How about this? A South American couple earns the world record for nearly 100 body modifications.
Oh my.
Yeah.
100
They,
body modifications.
yeah, South American couple with over 98 body modifications earned a world record for their collective number of piercings, microdermals, body implants, and other modifications, according to Guinness Book of World Records. I think Guinness is just out there encouraging people to do crazy things. Not saying, listen, again, this is not a judgment zone, but
Nope.
We do have a picture that we're going to post as part of this episode of this couple. But anyhow, the couple from South America have 50 piercings,
50 piercings,
8 microdermals, 14
microdermals.
body implants. I don't know what that could be.
What could that be? Like something sticking out of your shoulder, like I don't know, maybe a
probably
spike.
Yeah, it could be your butt cheek. I have no idea.
Who knows?
5 dental implants, 4 ear expanders. I mean, 4. 2 ear bolts. I'm not sure what that is. 1 forked tongue. I think I could figure out what that is. And they both have also had their scleras,
Their what?
scleras, the white part of their eyes tattooed.
The white part of their eyes tattooed.
Yep. The daring pair, who have been married 14 years, first met at a motorcycle event 24 years ago and bonded over their penchant for body modification.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah.
honey, what do you want to do this weekend? I don't know. Let's have my arm and move it to my leg.
It's interesting. I really truly have no judgment about it, but it's just funny what a wide spectrum there are. People who like that, and then people who absolutely would never do anything to their body as it was born. So anyhow, there's that out there in 2022. Here's an interesting kind of a feel-good story. I think it's a feel-good story. It's an interesting one anyhow. Do you know that doctors in 4 Canadian provinces have been approved to begin prescribing a year-long pass to national parks? So yeah. So
another reason to move to Canada.
Exactly. The Canadian healthcare system has found that it's important for people to get out into nature.
Wow.
Apparently more and more studies are finding that a variety of mental health problems, including those triggered by climate change or eco-anxiety, can be effectively treated by spending time in nature. Studies have also found it can also reduce chronic stress, improve birth outcomes, and even help children succeed in life. So
that makes a lot of sense.
So the Parks Canada is backing in. Over 1,000 healthcare professionals in the Canadian provinces of British Columbia, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba can now prescribe a Parks Canada Discovery Pass worth over $70 to a patient. I think that's getting your priorities in order. Seriously, you talk about the best kind of medicine out there. I am very grateful to hear that Canada is leading that charge. So,
indeed, and you know what, Joe? Windsor is south of Detroit.
Yeah,
despite what Journey says in their song, there is no South Detroit, but there is Windsor, and Windsor's in Ontario, and there's a lot of doctors there that could maybe prescribe us that.
Yeah, I like it. So
that's
so
good.
There's that. Yeah,
I like that.
And let's see. The only other really interesting story I found that I would always get attracted to and that is this idea of UFOs and otherworldly beings. I think it's worth noting that in 2022, the Pentagon established an agency or an office to keep track of UFO sightings.
Sweet.
The brand new All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or the acronym AARO, has received several hundred reports of unidentified flying objects since July, according to the AP. The office was created over the summer to monitor instances of UFOs in the sky, space, and underwater. It also tracks objects that can transverse between one domain and another. These UFOs are officially referred to as unidentified anomalous phenomena. or UAP, according to the Department of Defense. Now, I just think that's fascinating. For years, people have been called crackpots for viewing or saying that they've seen UFOs. And now we've got the Department of Defense seemingly embracing it. And part of the reason they did it is military personnel, especially pilots, have seen so many strange things and have been afraid to come forward with it. And now they're doing something about it. But apparently the reason for this AARO, or one of the main reasons for this AARO, is to improve the means of identifying UFOs, drones, futuristic stealth bombers, and hypersonic missiles developed by the United States and China, which could be confused as UFOs. So we've got all this going on up there, but we've got an agency out there deciphering between the UFOs and hypersonic missiles that are being launched by China and the United States. So we've got that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they're actually listening. And what I'm hearing from you is that so many reliable sources are reporting these things. And I did see a clip recently where a military guy was saying that the most interesting thing happens below the water surface, and that's a sort of a new phenomenon. But I got two things to say to that. I'm glad that they're now taking the word of experts, because every time I talked about it and told them how the probes have improved over the years, I just get labeled a crackpot, like you said. And here's another thing I saw.
I think you were labeled a crackpot before that.
Before I got taken up. All right. Well, maybe. But here's something I read once, and it's a quote that sticks with me. It says, disavowing that aliens have visited us or are around us is like taking a spoon and dipping it into the ocean and saying that they don't that because there's no whales in your spoon, they don't exist, or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it. And that, I think, as we're learning from the new James Webb Space Telescope, the universe is a lot bigger than we ever imagined.
Oh, my goodness. The pictures that thing's sending back.
It's incredible. Hey, I do have one last story kind of ending this year and our podcast on a very, very happy note. Once endangered humpback whales are growing in population globally thanks to conservation efforts.
Yay.
Humpback whales were almost entirely wiped out by commercial whaling in the 19th and 20th century, according to the Endangered Species Coalition, and were one of the first species to be federally protected under the Endangered Species Act. However, due to amazing global conservation efforts, the current global population of humpback whales has rebounded from a low point of 10,000 back to nearly 80,000 as of 2022.
Wow.
And God bless it. I mean, it makes me want to cry to think that they could go extinct. But the fact that they're coming back strong like this gives me a lot of hope.
Me too, because their brains are bigger than ours, and allegedly they can use a lot more of theirs than we can of ours. And I think there's a lot to learn from whales.
Yeah, I think their ability to live symbiotically may be better than ours. I'm not sure.
Yeah, could be. Well, I think we've prepared the listeners well for 2023, Joe.
No, it was fun.
That.
Yeah.
If anybody's traveling in any of those states that I mentioned, beware of those laws. If you want to email me, I'll give you the at talk@friendsinwonder.com. I'll give you the full list of laws from all the states.
If anybody wants to be in the Guinness Book of Records, you got to get up to about 110 body modifications.
Yeah,
so,
110 body piercings. Well, Joe, it has been a great year, and I totally agree that 2022 has been a year of gratitude. We have so much to be grateful for. Our wonderful wives, each other, all our family, and all our friends in wonder who are still spinning around the sun with us at about 17 miles a second.
Absolutely, Vince. Couldn't have said it better myself. A year of gratitude. What a great way to end it. And I really have enjoyed this process with you, sir. So happy New Year.
And that's a wrap for 2022. On behalf of Friend in Wonder co-hosts Joe Luther and Vince Kern, we'd like to thank all our friends in Wonder for a great year. As always, you can find us on any podcast platform, friendsinwonder.com, and share feedback at talk@friendsinwonder.com.